Alrighty. I am Jake Major, back with the handsome. Introduce yourself.
I thought you were going to do it for me. You're already building me up, you know?
I like letting people say their own names.
I like it. All right, well, I'm Sam Pletcher, a.k.a. Luxio Bro, and we got a fire round 2 matchup coming up, although I almost hesitate to describe it as such because last round we had 2 gouging fires. This round, we're going to see some slightly different teams.
Yeah, so we have a player whose first tournament it is ever, George Reeves against Charlotte, whose last name I don't want to butcher right now.
Schoenthaler, she told me.
Well, there it is. I don't have to butcher it. Let Sam do the work for me of not actually butchering it. So George actually running a really different team than we're used to seeing, leaning into Trick Room, but with some definitely different choices. In Charlotte's team, I actually don't have the team sheet in front of me to look at.
I think Marshall's going to hand it over to us once he's done putting it into the stream, but let's talk about what George is running here. So we have a fairly standard Psy-Spam lead, although this is the Hatterene version as opposed to the Armor Rouge version. So we've got the NDD and Hatterene. When you need to set up Trick Room, that's who you call. And then in the back, however, he's also got a different way to set up Trick Room with a Sinus Cha. And then as for what he's going to do once Trick Room is up, well, we're talking Iron Hands, we're talking Pre-Marina, and we're talking the new Archaladon.
Yeah, so definitely a bit different. You know, that Sinistra kind of falling out of favor, especially now that Urshifu Dark is big, and we have, I don't know, the big dragons that are running around. Sinistra falling out of favor a little bit, but thanks to Hospitality, I think a pretty good pick, especially with these bulky Pokemon. Being able to rotate out with an Archaladon that can stack up stamina is going to be terrifying, especially with his Archaladon carrying the leftovers. Iron Hand's actually running the new move Supercell Slam, a bit of a risky option, but a harder hitting one for sure.
Yes, indeed. It's got that extra 10 base power as opposed to Wild Charge. On the surface, it looks like it solves the recoil problem, but that's only if you hit. And this includes if you hit into a Protect, if you miss due to the 5% chance, or if you target into a ground type. And actually, I have a question. Do you know if the Supercell recoil procs if you attack into a Pokemon with, say, Volt Absorb or Motor Drive or something like that?
I believe so. Any sort of immunity is going to make Supercell Slam, quote-unquote, miss. I could be speaking incorrectly, but I believe that is how the interaction works.
I've got some good news for George, though. Looking at Charlotte's team, I see no ground types, so he is only going to have to worry about Protects if he, in case of using Supercell Slam, as far as that recoil is concerned. It'll also be interesting to see if George really leans into what seems to be a more aggressive mode, featuring the Hatterene and the Pre-Marina, or a more defensive mode, where, as Jack alluded to, stacking up stamina boost with Archaladon, swapping in and out that Sinus Cha for the Hospitality healing. So we'll see how he decides to run against this really interesting team that Charlotte is bringing.
Yeah, so Charlotte bringing the same team that I believe she brought to the Cheese League yesterday, with a Whimsicott, Annihilate, Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, Wellspring, Fluttermane, and Incineroar. So Whimsicott with Annihilate, usually you think, oh, Terracott. Well, what about Annihilacott?
Annihilacott?
Yeah.
Whimsape? I think
Whimsape?
maybe? Who knows? Whimsicott here kind of functioning as a hybrid between 2 often seen support Pokemon. It gets beat up like Mousehold does, and Mouseape has been a staple of VGC throughout the early series of Scarlet and Violet, but it also features that Prankster Tailwind that we've come to associate with Tornadus. And so slap a Covert Cloak on it, give it Moonblast, and it certainly has its own niche. It also has the interesting move Fake Tears that can combo with some of Charlotte's other picks.
Yeah, so another different pick, Raging Bolt with that Assault Vest deciding to run Double Electric, Dragon Pulse, and Snarl. Going to be able to slow down this Psy-Spam potentially, but we don't see it on the lead, as we actually see a standard Psy-Spam lead from George.
Yeah, and it looks like Charlotte has decided to bring out the Ogerpon and the Fluttermane. we'll see where this booster energy is for Fluttermane. My money's on special attack, and we are 1 for 1 today. And let's see, this Ogerpon, it'll be interesting to see if it decides to use the Terra. Getting that special defense boost can be really useful against the Psy Spam leads, but it looks like we just see the Follow Me and the Trick Room coming out to try to get the Trick Room up, and there is that Terra. We'll see if it also goes onto the Ogerpon for that boost and the increase in damage from the Ivy Cudgel.
Yeah, so thanks for that Psychic Seed on Indeed. This Fluttermane, no matter how hard it could hit, unless it gets a critical hit, probably not going to get a KO. So Charlotte smartly just going for the Terra here, wanting to get more damage out, likely onto the Indeed, going for the Follow Me. If there was no Follow Me, they're going to be able to hit that Hatterene. I don't know if it's a one-shot, but it had pretty good odds, as Indeed's not even going to take 50% from that special attack, boosted Moonblast, as Ivy Cudgel with the Terra boost is going to go into that Indeedee and is going to pick up a
crit.
Superfluous crit, I would assume.
I think so too.
As Hatterene is just going to be able to raise its little antenna and twist those dimensions.
Yeah, and I think George got what he wanted out of this turn 1. He was able to get the Trick Room up and keep Hatterene free from damage. That does mean that the Sinistcha coming in is not going to be able to proc the Hospitality, but it's a shiny. I wonder if that's a antique form as well. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But no, now it's just ready to go for some Machigachas and Expanding Forces and try to spread move his way through Charlotte's team. I'm interested that Fluttermane decided to go for Moonblast there. I wonder if it was redirected away from the Hatterene slot. We'll never know. But I feel that it actually might have been in Charlotte's interest to keep that Indeedee alive, as instead Indeedee doesn't do a ton of damage. And now that this Sinistcha gets the free switch in, it's just free to start going for Machigachas.
So Charlotte going to make a defensive switch here into Incineroar, which is a fantastic defensive switch. However, the drawback there is that the Photosynthesis boost from Fluttermane is never going to be able to return, as Expanding Force is going to come out, not doing any damage to Incineroar, and with the +1 special defense boost, still going to be able to get a 2-hit KO on that Ogerpon. Machigacha.
Oh, it survives.
Yeah, from Sinistcha.
Does it get burned?
Despite being...
It does. That's tough for Charlotte. Being able to... the special defense enabling that Ogerpon to survive the double up between the Twisted Spoon Expanding Force and the Machigacha. We see that burn, likely keeping the Hatterene alive. That's a difficult pill to swallow right there. Some bad luck in game 1.
Absolutely. So a 20% burn combined with a 90% accuracy doesn't give you the best odds, 18%. And Ogerpon really not enjoying that burn. It is interesting that despite Sinistcha hitting for super effective damage into that Ogerpon, doing way less than Hatterene would due to just how these Pokemon stats are likely trained. Hatterene with the Twisted Spoon, with the Psychic Terrain, doing a ton of damage. Ogerpon gonna be able to draw in any attacks that are gonna go into it. So Machigacha not mattering for a Follow Me, potentially mattering for a Strength Sap, which would be a very good call, as this Incineroar at -1 probably wouldn't be able to pick up a 1-hit KO on Sinistcha. But on this turn, if it's gonna go for a Flare Blitz, it may just have the power to do that. As we
Here it comes.
Flare Blitz come out, going into that Sinistcha, just barely hanging on in the high
helmet
or the low yellow. Incineroar going to be taking the Rocky Helmet and the Flare Blitz recoil for its trouble. Is going to be knocked into a decent amount of HP.
Yeah, I think Charlotte realized that the Ogerpon was kind of at the end of its life there. Follow Me, kind of a superfluous click, given that every single move that George could have clicked was a spread. Actually, I stand corrected. That Strength Sap would be an interesting click, and it may come into Incineroar right now to try to heal itself all the way back up to full and reduce the damage of these oncoming Flare Blitzes. However, I think this Raging Bolt, we'll see how much, it takes almost nothing from the Dazzling Gleam. Wow, that Assault Vest is really putting in work.
Yeah, so we see the Strength Sap go into that Incineroar. Sinistcha probably going to take all of its HP back to itself, slurping up Incineroar's HP, just like the Machina makes for its allies. As Flare Blitz going into the Hatterene, just barely missing the KO there. And Raging Bolt gonna
who's
go
that
for a
gonna
snarl,
miss?
missing
The Hatterene. Oh my goodness.
Crucially, so it is going to be able to stay on the field, as neither of these Pokemon have Protect. We're likely just going to see a Shadow Ball into Raging Bolt and a Dazzling Gleam be able to pick up these KOs. Raging Bolt, I believe, still not being able to go to that Thunderclap thanks to the Psychic Terrain being on the field. So, you know, that burn on Ogerpon is what I want to return to, because that was a big pivot point in this match where Charlotte, we saw that survive. It was huge. Hatterene would have gotten knocked out had it done double the damage it was able to without the burn. But this game is going to close out. Oh,
the Raging Bolt. Don't sleep on the Raging Bolt.
To the Snarl.
Goes for the Dragon Pulse, deciding, you know what, I'm done missing Snarl. That's going to take out the Sinistcha. And, you know, I got to think that despite some really tough RNG going against her, Charlotte's got to be pretty enthused by how the game has ended up playing out. Because here you have this Primarina and Flutter Mane. I think, depending on how the Primarina and Raging Bolt are trained, I'm going to assume that the Raging Bolt's faster, given that George is a Trick Room-based team. Charlotte might just be able to take a couple KOs here, but George going for his last. We'll see if George ends up clicking that Terra button. That was kind of his last gasp in order to save this game.
And I wish I had been taking notes, because I totally forgot that that Flutter Mane had switched out.
As did I.
I thought this was nearly over for Charlotte. But one last breath, probably going to be able to go for a Dazzling Gleam to take off those last hit points on Hatterene and go for a clean Thunderbolt onto the Primarina.
Hatterene
actually carrying the Protect, so not going to be able to pull that off. Flutter Mane going for the Shadow Ball
into the Hatterene. Wow, a Dazzling Gleam probably would have been the better choice, just to avoid that possibility of targeting to Protect. The Thunderbolt gets the paralysis. This could be the reversal of Charlotte's fortunes that she's been waiting for. It does not proc, however. In comes a Terra Blast. Who's it going to go into? The Flutter Mane. So the Raging Bolt lives to see another turn. The Life Orb tick pops down, and we're in for a wild last turn.
Yeah, so interestingly, George not having that Dazzling Gleam, which would have been able to take out the Raging Bolt this turn. And, you know, Flutter Mane, does it have Dazzling Gleam? It does. So
it
interesting
does.
for her not to, or them not to click Dazzling Gleam here.
And here it comes. That's what it is.
It this time. Dazzling Gleam taking out the Hatterene. This paralysis, we'll see if it ends up mattering, but we did see the Raging Bolt move first last turn.
Here comes the Thunderbolt. Is it going to do enough? It will. Down goes Primarina, and Charlotte is going to take game one. Wow, despite having some really tough luck early on between the Macha Gotcha burn and the Raging Bolt missing the Snarl onto the Hatterene, Charlotte is able to survive 5 turns in Trick Room and turn the tables on George. So quite the comeback and some strong mental fortitude from Charlotte.
Absolutely. I think Charlotte did a great job that game, just neutralizing the amount of damage that George was able to throw out, thanks to a bit of a Snarl, thanks to that Assaultless Raging Bolt. The amount of damage it took was pretty low.
Yeah, I think that Raging Bolt is the key to this matchup here. It'll be interesting to see if Charlotte chooses to lead the Raging Bolt again. I think it has an excellent matchup into that Indeedee Hatterene if you can get those Snarls off. Assuming you can hit the Snarls, no guarantee, especially since it looked like George is kind of throwing what he knows. Although this time, it looks like there's going to be the possibility of an Archaladon in the back as opposed to the Primarina.
Yeah, so I was just talking with Aaron Trailer, who was on last round. He was telling me Archaladon should have a different form just for Boston, where it looks like the Zakem Bridge. So that is not going to be London Bridge today. That's going to be Boston's own Zakem Bridge. If I'm Charlotte here, as much as I was crunched last game, I think I need to make the adjustment of getting Raging Bolt on the field sooner, throwing out those Snarls, not missing them.
Instead, it looks like we have Ogerpon and Incineroar, and I respect the Incineroar lead because Incineroar is so good into Indeedee and Hatterene. Doesn't take anything from what the two of them have to throw out. Interestingly, though, Charlotte's Incineroar does not carry a damaging Dark-type move. The set is Flare Blitz, Fake Out, Taunt, and Parting Shot. So if Charlotte wants to do any damage, she's going to have to click that Flare Blitz and take some recoil.
So going to be able to taunt Indeedee if they want to. Another interesting interaction that I know has been key is, say there was no Indeedee on the field right now.
Oh, yes.
If Incineroar were to go to Parting Shot on the Hatterene, Hatterene would be the one leaving the field. So if there was no Follow Me here, a pseudo taunt of just getting Hatterene off the field by forcing its magic bounce. We do see Charlotte, though, going for a Terra here.
This worked so well for her last game, being able to get that special defense boost, take less from that expanding force, and also guarantee the Oko on the Hatterene. Yeah, you know, that parting shot magic bounce interaction, that was big in Sword and Shield when Hatterene could Dynamax, because if Hatterene Dynamaxed, it would force it to use parting shot and waste however much Dynamax was left. So we'll see if that kind of interaction remains here as kind of a relic of a bygone era. Here comes the Ivy Cudgel leaving Indeedee with about 50 health left. Flare Blitz is going to finish it off, and we'll see if we're right back where we started with George getting Trick Room at the cost of his faithful Indeedee.
Yeah, so Indeedee doing the job that Indeedee wanted to do, and as you mentioned last time, Sam, Charlotte in a spot where they just let two offensive menaces come onto the field potentially. I wouldn't call this little teacup the biggest offensive menace, but nonetheless a free switch after getting KO'd, exactly what you want on this sort of team.
Absolutely. Personally, I'm a little surprised that we're not seeing our Archaladon come in, especially since we know it's in the back. Right now it's facing an Incineroar and an Ogerpon, two Pokemon that with its Dragon typing and Stamina ability, it really wants to see on the field. Although it might have to take a parting shot for his troubles, I think that would be well worth getting onto the field at this point. But instead we see the Sinistcha presumably to come in, throw some Machigachas onto that Ogerpon, and maybe get lucky with another burn.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see the Sinistcha this time going for the Terra. Going to be able to resist the Flare Blitz. Still going to be able to resist the Ivy Cudgel. But not going to resist a grass move that Ogerpon could go for. So Charlotte wants to make the call. They could easily double up with a fire and a grass move into that slot.
Oh, and there it is. There is the parting shot magic bounce interaction. So Incineroar is going to target the parting shot into the Hatterene. Hatterene is going to reflect that back into the Incineroar, and you know, maybe we will see the Archaladon on the field after all.
Yeah, so as much as I did want to see that interaction, I'm not sure if that's where I want to see it. You know, Hatterene got its damage off, and now it's not going to be taking any damage from the turn. Archaladon gets a very, very sweet free switch. Machigacha coming out from the Sinistcha, going into that Ogerpon. Will it get the burn this time? It
to be determined. It does not. So here comes the Ivy Cudgel, but we'll see where that's targeting. I'm going to presume it was going into the Hatterene slot, in which case the parting shot magic bounce, as cool as it was to see, like you said, that's really going to play into George's favor here, because Archaladon is going to get that stamina boost. It's not going to take very much damage, and now it can start hanging out, pumping up that defense with some stamina boosts, and maybe throwing out some body presses.
Absolutely. And to boot, that Incineroar has its damage weakened from Flare Blitz now. So probably going to have to be going for a parting shot, probably into that Archaladon, because we know that that little teacup is not doing the most amount of damage, as, you know, the Ogerpon probably free to just go for a Spiky Shield here, stall a turn, get Fluttermane out onto the field, and I doubt that George would call that, given that the body press was so free, but we'll absolutely see what happens on this turn.
Oh, great switch by Charlotte, calling the body press, keeping the Incineroar safe from that damage, and the Strength Sap now going into the Fluttermane, which has a pitiful attack stat. So great switch by Charlotte, not going to return any health, and as Jack said, the Terastallization for the Sinistcha, making it weak to that Horn Leech, and Charlotte sees an opportunity to go for it, and despite the Rocky Helmet, puts it back about where it was before, but at the cost of a lot of health from that little teacup, as we, I guess, now are obligated to refer to Sinistcha.
I'll be honest, it's just the first thing that comes to my mind. I don't remember the name Sinistcha as quickly as I remember the little teacup. So Charlotte threatening two protects here. I say threatening, but more threatening the Trick Room with two
Threatening
protects.
the Trick Room, I like that.
As well as an Incineroar switch in, which, although the Intimidate wouldn't be doing anything, just the fact that you would have that pivot option, I don't think Fake Out would be coming up soon, but that pivot not coming in and no protects coming out.
No, a couple strong moves coming out, but Charlotte's Pokemon are going to survive them both and retaliate. There comes the Horn Leech, knocking out the Sinistcha, and that's going to, the health restored from the Horn Leech is going to allow Ogerpon to survive the Rocky Helmet, and then we'll see what this Fluttermane can throw off into the Archaladon, given its pitiful special defense and the fact that it's not carrying the Assault Vest, I think this is going to do a lot of damage. Here comes a Shadow Ball, and wow, look at that. Almost takes it out. I think a Moonblast might have actually done it, but now Charlotte's in an excellent position. Trick Room, I think, is over if I've counted correctly. Or do we have one more
it's
turn?
either this or one more turn, and I
think
believe
it's
that
one more
the
turn.
switch-in indicates that it is one more turn. So Charlotte's going to be able to go for a very, very free double protect if they recognize that play. Had Sinistcha stayed on the field and Archaladon been the one to go down, George would have been in a spot where he could have gone for a double Trick Room, actually, to get Trick Room back up. As we see Charlotte going for the Spiky Shield. And are we going to see the Flutter Mane protect?
Yes, we will.
We absolutely will. Charlotte playing perfectly to their positioning in this game.
Expanding Force going to hit
the
some protects.
Into the 2 protects. Not going to be able to get any damage out this turn, as we are going to see Trick Room expire and Psychic Terrain expire, I believe, as we did see last game that a non-burned Terra Ogerpon would be able to pick out this knockout on the Hatterene.
And it especially will if there's some Dazzling Gleam chip. So again, we'll see if Charlotte recognizes the play. Instead, she just goes for that Shadow Ball. That should also be more than enough to pick up the Hatterene. And I think this Ivy Cudgel here should be able to take out the Archaladon through the stamina boost. And if so, that would be a 2-0 for Charlotte as she moves on. Oh, it does not. So it looks like we're going to be postponed at least one more turn. I have faith that whatever that 4th Mon in the back is should be able to finish things off. And that would put Charlotte at 2-0.
The Zakem finally picks out a knockout. Dude, he knocked out Flutter Mane.
All right, yeah, well, you know, I guess I'll have to concede that given the location. But as somebody from the Bay Area, I kind of see Archaladon as the Golden Gate Bridge myself. But I guess, you know, maybe it'll be kind of like a Vivillon with Vivillon with all the regional forms. It can just be like whatever bridge is in your area. Yeah. Oh, there's the fake out. Gonna bring out the stamina boost. I don't know what Charlotte has in the back, but I think we're just kind of. I think is she trying to see how little damage she can do to the Archaladon right now? I think it's healing more from leftovers than it is taking from these hits. I'm imagining that whatever's in the back is probably going to have enough damage. I think a Moonblast from Whimsicott would take it out.
Probably Raging Bolt.
Dragon Pulse, Dragon Pulse from Raging Bolt would take it out. But, so we're kind of dragging this on a little bit, but I'm going to say Charlotte has it in the bag at this point.
They are playing fire a little bit.
6 HP?
They just keep loading up that stamina. Body Press probably going to be able to...
I was going to say, don't tell me you went for Parting Shot. That's going to be enough. And our Archaladon goes down. Charlotte's 2-0, and there you go. What a round.
Yeah, so Charlotte taking the slow route at the end of that game, showing that
a lot of respect to the bridges in the Boston area.